So basically, I will do just a short presentation about the day, and then we move forward from this presentation. So basically, in terms of the agenda, Georg Ruben will be speaking about the EU, the EC support for smart city projects, and what is the landscape, and what is expected and available for you. Then we have a presentation from the NVGL about the opportunities and challenges for district heating and their lessons learned working with public authorities or local authorities. If you have developed your projects, we can discuss it and present it to everyone. And then we hope to have a kind of review about what happened over the last 2 days and this third day, and what we can improve for future editions of the masterclass. And we end up the day. So this is our agenda. I just want to give a kind of review about what we do, and some kind of lessons learned, but in just in 2 minutes. So basically, the Smart Cities Marketplace is here to help you through different activities, what we call Explore, Shape, Deal. On the deal part, where we have matchmaking, that's where we try to link project developers with investors so that the investments go to the ground. But we help before that projects to be shaped through different activities like workshops, webinars, or masterclass like this one, and also in the Explore, giving the fact that the marketplace is a marketplace where you can explore and find all the information that you need around the smart cities space. As you know, we also have this call for projects, where we try to gather the information about possible projects to be financed. And if those projects met the requirements of our investors, we will link them with one of our investors. Yesterday evening, we got the agreement of a bank, a big bank in Europe also. So this network is growing, and our goal is to link the projects with this type, the investors that we have. This is my last slide, and I think that this is kind of relevant, because this I try to translate it here, the lessons learned from the projects that we got. And so these are tips for whenever you try to present a project for an investor. First of all, a detailed project concept. This is very relevant to provide a lot of information about the project whenever you want to finance that project. We see that a lot of projects that are presented to us do not have all the information needed, and this can be a problem, since the investor on the other side will not be sufficiently confident to go forward with that project, because it doesn't know all the details of the investment. Also, very important to be aligned with the city vision. So this is where our masterclass came from. Basically, we think that, and our experience tells us that it's really important to have the vision of the city, and then the project will fit on that vision. Every time that a project does not fit in the vision, or it's just a ad hoc project that come out of the blue, it's hard to get financed, because the investor like to see that this is in a broader scope, that this is aligned with the vision of the city, with the political vision, with the vision of all the stakeholders. And that's the other point, aligned with stakeholders in the local ecosystem. So it's really relevant to involve not just the city mayor, but all the other stakeholders that are relevant for that process. And for more complex projects, more local stakeholders are needed. Also, really relevant is to translate all the benefits into euros or into money, if you can. because in that way you can demonstrate the added value of the project. Be aware that although investors like to invest in environmental, social, or governance projects, so projects that cover these three aspects, at the end of the day, their work is around the value in terms of money of that project. So it's really relevant for you to try to translate all the benefits into euros. And lastly, but very, very important, it's about the business model. It's sometimes we get projects that do not present a clear business model. This could happen for two reasons. If it's a low maturity project, so you are still working on the business model, that's okay. But sometimes there are projects that already have been developed in terms of technical terms, in a lot of aspects, but they haven't thought about the business model. And you should include this thinking about how will I finance, what's the model behind it, all of that during the concept project, not or the design of the project, not at the end of the process. So this is a relevant point that I wanted to stress. And that was my presentation. I will stop sharing now. And I would like to give the floor to Georg to talk us a little bit about the landscape. And we know that a lot of things are changing in the Commission, or we see the EU Green Deal, other initiatives that are changing the landscape of sustainable finance and the smart cities. So it will be good to hear from you a kind of overview of what's happening and what we can expect in the near future.
Okay, with pleasure. Thank you. I will also try to share my screen just for one single slide, if you allow. And that is this one here. Give me a moment. So here we go. I hope you can see that. That might be a repetition of presentation as I gave in the past, but let's say these are the big, bold things to consider when it comes to cities and actually the support to cities. So we have here the European Green Deal, we have Horizon Europe, we have Invest EU, we have Next Generation EU, which is supporting the recovery after COVID. We have the respective recovery fund. That is, let's say, the high level, high impact European programs. But there's a whole lot more. There is a number of initiatives. We have the Smart Cities Marketplace, which is organizing this masterclass and providing practical help with finding finance for projects. Then we have a number of specialized initiatives all over the place. We have Civitas, we have Living in EU by the colleagues of DG Connect, looking into digital transformation in the urban context. And we have the Covenant of Mayors, who is looking into commitments as regards climate change, climate mitigation, energy efficiency, and the alike. So, but that's just the vast landscape of things you can actually use in order to get financing or funding for your respective city action or smart city action. There is a disclaimer, however. With EU programs, we always have a bit of the problem that we look into the bigger cities, the bigger regions, those who bring the most impact. And that is a bit in the DNA of an EU call or an EU activity as such, because you need to find the right balance between having impact on one hand, but also being inclusive on the other. And that is sometimes a bit controversial. So what we really need in the long run, if we want to successfully and effectively and efficiently support the European Green Deal, but also the recovery, the post-COVID-19 recovery, is actually providing financing to smaller and medium-sized cities. Because these are the bulk of cities we look at in Europe. We don't have so many big cities, and the bigger cities anyway sort of have already embarked on that journey to become smart and even climate neutral in some cases. So and that's where actually this masterclass and the smart cities marketplace tries to trigger that process of looking at what's available in the explorer phase, using that to be inspired, then shaping project ideas from that, and trying to find financing from within our network of investors. Now, but that's just what's available. So what's up next? That was also a question, I guess, George, you asked. Well, there is a lot of things going on at the moment. We should also expect a smart cities or cities dedicated part of the work program. I would believe this is available around March. At the moment, since it's also listed on this slide, you see the mission on climate neutral and smart cities, which is aiming at 100 climate neutral cities by 2030. That is, or will most probably represent a big share of that work program dedicated to cities. And therefore, there's a lot of overlap, or not overlap, but a lot of areas of common interest, I shall say, where other programs would like to go into as well. So at the moment, there is a bit of negotiation still ongoing, how to best place these different grants and calls and financing tools in order to make some sense out of it and really to avoid overlaps and foster synergies between the various parts of the work program. There's also the LIFE program, which is about to become ready, I understand. And also there's a quite some stuff on cities. There is for sure a huge part on buildings. And here you might know already the renovation wave as a keyword. So the renovation wave is one of the really big, bold flagship activities under the European Green Deal, actually touching on many things when it comes also to cities, like taking an integrated approach on district or neighborhood level, addressing stuff like energy poverty, just transition consideration. So how do we do that so that, let's say, the poorest people are not left out? We have considerations in the direction of transport, but then also considerations in the direction of ICT and so on. So all that is very much integrated and interlinked, and that is hopefully coming soon. My understanding at the moment, although I cannot reveal any details, as you might understand, I would expect this for March, April to be available with the next update of the Horizon Europe work program. And that's about it from my end. I just, want to welcome you again to this third part of the masterclass. We will continue with this type of events, really to create a forum to raise the profile of city projects which are financed rather than funded, and really to give practical help with that, and maybe to start a movement. I should also say that heating and cooling is still very high on the agenda, and I'm very, very grateful that the Celsius project is co-organizing this masterclass edition together with us. And I hope that some great projects come out of that. With this, enjoy this last part of the masterclass. I wish you already now much success with whatever you have in mind, what you want to implement. I will stick around this event should you have any questions, and will now give the floor back to Josh, I guess. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Georg, for this presentation. Basically, I will give the floor now to Ben to talk us about the challenge that and the experience that the NVGL has found during their work with local authorities on district energy projects.
Hi, George. Thank you for inviting me for this masterclass. Very pleased to present you part of DVGL's experiences. As you might know, DVGL is a rather big company with quite a spread in Europe and also outside Europe. I myself only worked in the Netherlands and Belgium on district heating and cooling projects. And most of what I'm going to present is based on my own experiences. So I guess by now, most of you have seen my face and are a bit used to my voice. So I will start sharing my screen. So I will start talking a bit on, which is only 2 to 5 minutes on the kind of projects I executed the last 5-6 years on district heating and cooling, so that you know from which perspective and background I am calling. Then I have a few slides on the context of district heating in the Netherlands, which also contributes, of course, to everything I will present afterwards, because the starting situation to some degree has also influence on challenges and success factors. The call will be on key success factors and challenges. I will do that from a generic perspective, and I will also zoom in on the specific challenges for cities with existing district heating networks and cities who try to set up a new district heating network. Then I have a few slides on ownership. That could have been, right at the start, because that's context information. But I guess because that's in all my projects, that this is a subject that will lead to several questions also in this master class. And then I will end with a framework for techno-economic analysis of existing or potential new networks. And that really gives, I think, a good view on the lenses or on the aspects we keep in mind when working on district networks. And I was easy enough or early enough to see the last slides of yours, and I saw a lot of important success factors or aspects, I forgot the title, that are also in my presentation. So probably we get some common ground. Okay, so this is the list of, well, a part of the list of district heating projects I've done. And you can, when you know the Netherlands and Belgium a bit, you can see that we did a lot of work for the main cities in these countries. You only see 2 or 3 medium and smaller size cities, and that could directly lead to the conclusion that, especially in the bigger cities with a high density of dwellings and potential connections, district heating systems are more popular, successful than in medium and small cities. What you could also conclude is that the challenges in these big cities, due to lack of space or space scarcity, is also an element that is relevant for this. So that's the other one is that although in all these upper 8 projects, the main contracting partner for the NVGL was the city council, that in several of these projects, other organizations like housing companies, which are quite dominant in a lot of cities in the Netherlands, but also local energy corporations led by by citizens played a very active role in giving the assignment and participating in the feasibility studies and the design. And that is really an important partner, and serves for this local connectedness with the local community that I also saw as one of the points in the slides of Jorg. The other one, well, can talk a lot about this slide, but I think it was wise to mention in the bottom row, you don't see cities, you see district heating operators. So sometimes, or not on a regular basis, we also work for them. They, of course, to some degree, other questions, see other risks, other challenges, but they are part of the same picture. And last but not least, we also performed several projects in developing new technical low temperature district heating concepts. So that's what the kind of clients I work from. The work ranges from a first strategy development to generic feasibility studies, a lot of work on assessing, selecting the future sustainable energy sources, and in several occasions also forming a consortium or independent energy service company that would be able or would be leading the design, development, and operation of a district heating company. Any urgent questions already? Maybe we should have said that from the beginning. I like the interaction in these kind of sessions, so feel free to ask a question anytime you feel is relevant.
Ben, if I may already, I have a question, especially on the geographic focus you have with Flanders and the Netherlands where you did projects. Now, in the Netherlands, there is, the big movement to go out of gas, and they have a lot of pilot projects on district heating. And I was wondering if you see a difference in, what the cities are doing in types of projects between Flanders, where there's not such a national or regional push yet, and the national landscape or policy landscape for the Netherlands.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I see far more similarities than differences. Although we have to appreciate that this fierce ambition to replace natural gas with other renewable heat sources is a specific driver, but also in the projects I did for Antwerp, Kortrijk, Ghent, etc., that there was a emphasis on sustainable district heating system as part of the energy transition challenge. And when I look at the landscape, I would say that the cities with the existing older big district heating networks, or maybe not the cities as a city council, for example, but the operators in these cities, they really have to have a big struggle for preparing for this energy transition. So it's not an advantage. I think it's merely a disadvantage and an advantage that you are in Belgium, quite new in the subject. Okay, so context of district heating, we already touched upon it by the question. We are a small country, 17.5 million inhabitants, 7.7 million houses and or apartments. 20% are built before 1945, and I think 40% before 1960. Everything built before 1945 is considered unsuitable for district heating systems. Anything between 45 and 60 is, by the kind and quality of building, considered a big question mark, and everything built after the 1960s is considered to be, and that's 60% of our houses and dwellings, to be suitable for district heating. And suitable is from a technical transition, but also from a financial perspective. 40% of these apartments and houses are in high density areas with over 2,500 homes, dwellings, potential connections per square kilometer. And that's considered as a rule of thumb that these kinds of density will lead with a well, rather high likelihood to a positive business case. So we have some, some very high and easy, and it's not specific DNVGL, it's quite general, also used by our competitors in the Netherlands, high level indicators to assess the potential of a positive business case for district heating systems. When you look at the current situation, we have almost 400 district heating systems. There are, I would say, around 20 rather old, almost legacy kind of big systems that have been initiated well, over 50 to 60 years ago. So starting in the 20th of the previous century, even millennium. And the others are newer ones, and especially when you look at the most recent new district heating systems, they often start on a much larger scale than the old ones. So when you the old ones are still, when you compare them, I think I know when you compare them with district heating systems in Scandinavia, and probably also in Eastern Europe, what we call big is rather small compared to Scandinavia, because our big systems have around 60,000 connections. The medium size is around 20 to 30,000, and we have hundreds of small, very local neighborhood district heating systems, rather new ones also, with sustainable sources with, well, 2,000 to 10,000 connections. Okay, what's what's specific for our country definitely is that there is an ambition to replace natural gas, formerly natural gas, Dutch natural gas, as a heating source before 2050, and half it somewhere around 2030, which is translated in most cities and driven by all kind of sustainability discussions with inhabitants, to a replacement of gas in natural, not only Dutch gas, also foreign natural gas, also biogas, etc., etc. We aim for a severe or substantial reduction of heat use. of 32 to 50% up to 2050. There is a big focus on renewable sources, with emphasis on geo and ecothermal sources, and there's fierce competition with heat pump suppliers, so leading to electrification of heat strategy. That's more or less the context of district heating in the Netherlands.
Excuse me, Ben, may I ask you one question?
Yeah, of course.
Please, if it's data that's known to you of 17.5 million inhabitants, how much in percentage of Dutch people are connected to district heating? And second, my question, are prices for district heating per kilowatt hour competitive to other prices for thermal energy for other classical way of heating?
Yeah. Okay. So what you see here is that we have approximately 400 connections to district heatings. So that's a small percentage. It's, well, who is very fast? It's around 5%, I would say. Yeah, it's a bit less than 5% of the houses and the dwellings. And we'll have to elaborate maybe with one sentence on this. You know, the focus is on houses and apartments, but like you probably imagine, especially in these neighborhoods, we have also a lot of offices, a lot of small companies, like, well, let's say stores, hotels, shops, etc., etc. So not all 400,000 connections are connections of houses and dwellings. I would say that would be somewhere around 350, 360. So which makes it definitely around the 5%. So that's the answer to the first question, I guess. What was the second one? Could you repeat that?
Second one was about the prices. Are prices for heating energy competitive?
Well, depends a bit on who you ask. The prices, the simplest answer is yes, the prices are competitive, because there is a law that says that the price a supplier of heat or a district heating system could ask for their heat can't be higher than the price a similar apartment would pay for natural gas. So it's directly coupled through natural gas. And well, that's I think the formal answer. And when you look then again at the business cases we developed, or even the techno-economical due diligence colleagues of mine have done for existing district heating system, then it's let's say it's very tight. There are business cases where district heating companies are able to make what we call a reasonable profit from, and reasonable is in our country defined as something between a 5 to 8% profit margin after taxes, etc., etc. But there are also a lot who can't manage it, and the same counts for the new business cases we develop. It's always a challenge to come up with a competing offer, and I will come back to that also later on in a bit more detail. Okay, so this is a as part of the context, a example of one of our oldest, no, it is the oldest district heating network in Utrecht. It started in 1920s. It currently has 56,000 connections, and it's one of the three biggest. We have three in with similar size. The main source is from a gas-fueled CHP installation, so that's the waste heat from electricity production that's being reused there for city heating purposes. The temperature of the heat water in the system is in summer around 80 degrees Celsius, and in winters, although winters, well, not sure we have them. Yeah, we have one winter last week. It's a bit above the 100 degrees Celsius, which is quite different than the planned future. In the planned future, this future temperature is expected to be between 65 and 80 degrees. 80 degrees is necessary to be able to heat existing houses comfortably to a comfortable temperature in reasonable time frame. So that's really needed when we have a winter week. And the 65 degrees, well, that could have been lower in the winter, but because of we have to guarantee potable water quality, it should be 65 degrees. Okay. Yeah, a few market trends. This is a lot at once, so I go very fast through it. If you want me to elaborate a bit on some of these trends, well, you have to ask a question on it. Well, we see a lot of, as I said before, heat pumps pumping up low temperature sources like surface water from approximately 20-25 degrees Celsius to a 45-50 degrees Celsius temperature for low temperature heat networks. All networks, most networks that are currently developed are middle temperature networks. That means that they guarantee to deliver 70 degrees Celsius. So heat pumps are also used for that. And last but not least, high temperature heat pumps. We have a lot of hybrid solutions and even gas boilers, etc., and hybrid heat pumps to cover peak loads. Some are centralized on the site of the other energy resources, but we also see them currently in apartment buildings and also in individual dwellings. We have flexibility market where we use electricity to warm water and put it in highly efficient underground artificial storage at 80 to 90 degrees, and to deliver that to the district heating networks in later phases. With cascading waste heat, which is I think similar in all countries and a main issue, not only in district heating, but mainly in industry. So that's integration of energy systems, 4 important trends. Within district heating themselves, we decarbonize heat supply, we improve and work on storage capacities. I think the previous masterclass, you had already a discussion on open district heating networks where clients are able to choose for a specific suppliers, and suppliers of heat can compete with each other on a more or less open local market. And we see a considerable growth of very local, small, so that are these 1,000 to a max of 10,000, but often not more than 3,000-4,000 connections, low temperature and mid temperature networks developed and operated with by new entrants. So our district heating market has 3 very big players, 2 medium-sized players in the business for decades, and then other new entrants with mostly technology providers that step into the market and deliver, besides the energy technology for heat generation, also smaller networks. Industry and reuse, cascading waste heat from industry, and developing big industrial steam networks for the steam demand in industry is partly also an old business, but nowadays we see that in our main Dutch industrial clusters, that heat steam networks also with this cascading principle, so from high level to lower level steam, to high temperature to low temperature, with internal cascading within individual plants, to cascading as industrial symbiose in a business park, and in a third and fourth step delivering this this lower temperature and quality heat to buildings. In the demand we see, I'm not sure that's the same in surrounding countries. It is in Belgium, I for sure that, but not sure about bigger in Europe, that there's a rather ambitious policy to build nearly energy neutral buildings. So that counts for the dwellings and for the offices. There's the same driver for improved insulation for existing homes and buildings, which will lead to a considerable decrease of the heat demand. As I think was already discussed before, financing district heating networks is I think I can say it, is a bit of a pain in the ass for a lot of consortium. It's not a easy process, and it's really a subject we have to pay a lot of attention to. Last but not least, district cooling is in our country. Well, it's a rather new subject. Of course, in hotels, restaurants, and also in a lot of offices, the demand was already existing for decades. Solutions until 5 to 10 years ago were on apartment or office, or at least building level. But the last 5 years, we see a considerable amount of feasibility studies of new entrants and of the existing operators of district heating systems to add cooling services to their product portfolio, partly because district cooling can be a better, let's say, money maker for a business case in a certain neighborhood. So with adding cooling to the surfaces, the the business case is most times better. Nothing on this? No. Okay, key success factors. You see in the right second column the traffic lights. These traffic lights are the summary of a analysis we have done in one of our previous projects, and it is a fairly I would say average. No, it's not average, but it's not exceptional. So let's first go through the to the key factors, and after that I will say something of what comes out in a lot of our studies. Yeah. Okay, no-brainer, I think, should be by now that there need to be enough potential within local sustainable energy sources to source the district heating network, especially for the lower temperature district heating networks. The density of connection should be good enough, and density of connection is partly related to the density of the buildings, but it is also related to the share of people renting an apartment or owning an apartment and living in these apartments are in favor of a district heating solution. Supportive users. So that was the next one. They are connected, but are not the same. What's really essential for new and for existing district heating networks is that there's a clear city strategy and coherent set of policies with a mid and long term perspective to create the right conditions for the takeoff of district heating initiatives. There should be clear ownership and process management. Well, for some of you, this might be a no-brainer, but what I see in this Dutch culture where everyone is talking with everyone on everything, that there is often a lack of ownership. So and besides this ownership, the timing, the decision-making processes, the throughput time in the preparation and research phase, in the design phase, and in the development phase, can really hinder and can take up, well, we estimate, and some of our competitors also, a substantial part, up to 20% of the cost of the system development. Now, positive business case, not always easy. That's a no-brainer. Clear roles and responsibilities in all phases of the process, and especially in these new to be developed district heating systems. We see we see difference between a owner of the infrastructure to distribute the heat, multiple owners of the energy sources responsible for the supply of heat, and often even a separate party for handling the administrative processes. Okay, fair distribution of benefits and costs. So for the financial people, it's they might consider this is about euros, but it's not about euros. Euros are of course relevant, but this is mainly about the the size of the task, the amount of barriers that should be conquered. On the one side, so the difficult, ungrateful task in preparation, design, etc. Phase, and other sides benefits, which is easy to monetize. Yeah. Last but not least, that could be very, very local thing. So all parties, so on the supplying, distribution, and the client user side have different requests and see a different optimum between stability and long-term agreements on services, service conditions, cost and prices, and on the other side, flexibility, space to be able to go for new opportunities, and for example to adjust and elaborate services. That's also a very complex subject to deal with if you have to get agreement between 10, 15 essential stakeholders to get this district heating project running. Okay, the key success factors in our projects. There we are surprised if we see in our initial analysis, well, more than 4 green dots. And there are also a few on this list who are not covered at all, or in other situations who are on which a group of stakeholders is working already for a few years, but seem to be able to reach agreement on. And then it is, well, up to us or to our partners to make it work. Any questions on this? So if there are no questions, then I have one process question for you. How I'm doing speed-wise and level of detail-wise? Should I speed up?
I think that it's good for us to have this detail, since we are not so many in the call. It's too good to go with this detail, and we have the time for it. I don't know all the others, the opinion, but this is my view, and I think that and thank you for this presentation, because this is really aligned with what we were discussing, and this is very relevant for the discussion.
Okay, thanks for that. Sometimes there's still a strange typo. So the main challenges in cities with existing bigger district heating systems, so these are these systems being built well before the 60s, sourced by big CHPs, so waste heat of electricity producing units. Well, they had already, before we decided that we want to replace natural gas, they had already requests from cities, sometimes from very proactive city councils, but other times from very proactive inhabitants of the cities to shift to more sustainable sources. And in different of these cities, the city council and or inhabitants always said, well, if you don't come quick enough with a specific ambition and roadmap, we consider to, well, not to end our contract, but then we refuse to renew our contract, and then you are of course out of business. In most of the cities for these bigger systems, there are contracts with city councils or with housing companies for 20, 30 or 40 years. And after these years, they are renewed. And during that year, this district heating company has a monopoly to deliver heat to the dwellings. So that's one pain in the ass, because it means often a accelerated replacement of current resources. It means also that where they now have a very high temperature heat and they switch to alternative sources like geothermal, aquathermal, these are often even industrial waste heat from manufacturing companies, etc., like in the process, chemical industry, food industry. Then you have heat, often with a 25 to most 40 degrees Celsius. So there's no, there's a mismatch with this initial capacity and temperature level of these new resources and the current resources. So you either need very powerful heat pumps to get to this 90 or 110 degrees. And heat pump talking on industrial level, well, it's easy and it is affordable if you have to pump up your heat to 65, 70, maybe even 75 degrees. But if you have to go higher, then you need higher quality, far more expensive heat pumps to reach the desired temperature. So this is really a pain of the ass. A second worry is that in big cities, these sustainable sources are not always in the near proximity of current energy producing units, and not even often within city boundaries. So that's always that could be a very big challenge also. So the decreasing temperatures, we've discussed that.
Hello, Ben. Hello, Ben, excuse me.
Yeah, please.
One question. Did you consider other types of heat pumps besides water, for example, air-water systems? Because we had some...
yeah, you have, for example, CO2 based heat pumps. They can easier use high temperatures, but still a problem. We have done some work on thermochemical heat pumps, but that's a really innovative technology that's proven on lab scale, will probably enter the market in 3 to 5 years on a very small level. So that means we expect them. I think we are, now not we at DNVGL, but the Eindhoven University is about to start a few pilots with these kinds of heat pumps in 4 different cities in Europe with well, 10, 20, 30 small numbers of dwellings to learn and to be able to design a production line for these kind of heat pumps on commercial scale.
But is there any practical example that already running in a good way in Netherlands that you can propose, that you can say that it's a very best practice example in your land?
Yeah, there are. There are several, I think, tens of examples where, for example, surface water is used and is input for a heat pump to pump up the water temperature from 25 to this 75 degrees, and where it is used to distribute heat to 2,000 to 3,000 dwellings. So that's, on that level, is already a standard practice. We have currently, I think, 2 projects in the building phase. For one, I'm sure they also use, no, they are using both, I think. No, yeah, one for sure, and the second almost sure. They use waste water, but you know, other source, but same principle. Input is around 20 to 25 degrees. Output should be to be delivered to the dwellings is around 70, 75 up to 80 degrees. And these 2 deliver heat, are delivering or expected to deliver, I'm not sure they are operational yet, to 10,000 dwellings. And that's quite, yeah, we consider that quite a nice size. That's the Netherlands. This heat pump solution, and you asked for the Netherlands, this heat pump solution is quite new in the Netherlands, but in Scandinavia, Norway primarily, and a few, I think, in Sweden. There you find also large networks with a size that's about, I think, in the direction of almost 100,000 dwellings to be heated. So there you see, you know, when you've been, you see these enormous, it looks like a warehouse with 20, 30, 40 industrial size heat pumps. And some of these installations are 10 to 20 years old. So it's, yeah. The heat pumping technology up to 75, 80 degrees, that's really, we do really consider that on a European level as a mature, proven technology. If that was the background of your question. Okay. The last 2 challenges, these requests for new business models driven by or the need for new business models driven by the request of either government or citizens, the users of the users, the customers for open networks. A lot of the existing district heating system operators, they own and operate the infrastructure and the energy producing sources, and they've optimized their system, and they see a lot of complexity risen if they have to guarantee access of alternative producers of heat. We lack currently the laws, the governmental structure to deal accurately with these open networks. And we know, and we in the Netherlands, cities, district heating operators, and consultants like DNVGL visited a few times Denmark, where these kind of big open networks are common ground, but we seem to be incapable to develop a satisfying structure to meet the requirements on a way that is acceptable for all core participants. So if you start working on new and open networks, you definitely have to take a look in Denmark, and I would advise Copenhagen. That's really also a very big open heating network. And last but not least, challenge keeping up revenue to the current level by growing numbers of connections, because of this declining heat demand, because of the near energy neutral new buildings and improved insulation of existing buildings. The revenue streams in most cities are expected to decrease after 2030. Okay, which is also a problem for the new district heating systems. Yeah, specifically there, and it's not a really big problem, but the sourcing strategy, making sure that you have enough sustainable energy sources, well balanced, not too much sources like, surface water with a temperature in the Netherlands in the winter of approximately 5 degrees Celsius, and hardly, so no possibility of harvesting energy. Then you are practically running on one-to-one on electricity instead of harvesting heat on the one side. And on the other side, sources like a geothermal source with a very nice temperature range in the Netherlands, often between 40 and 80 degrees. In other countries further to the east and in the Alps, often around and above 100 degrees. That should be balanced to be able to deliver or to meet, that would be better wording, to meet the demands year around with a minimum on investments. Again, the request for open networks. It's even important here because you don't get enough clients or support of consumers if you don't guarantee some form of freedom of choice for suppliers, because we are used to it. We can it's one of the few markets where until now we as a customer, as a consumer in the Netherlands, haven't any freedom of choice. The third one is the long startup phase. So what happens here is that you have to have your part and sometimes a substantial, a great part of your sources and definitely of your infrastructure in place. And often you start investing now, and it takes then about 10 years before this anticipated group of consumers is connected. These are very slow processes. These are slow processes in existing neighborhoods, and they're even slower in newly built neighborhoods. So that's really a problem. I have to do my investments, the request for investments, the investments for pure delivery, the investments in backup, the investments in whatever have to be done now. And for some parts of the system, I have to do it right away on a, on a rather high level, and I'm kind of over investing capacity wise when I compare it what is needed the coming 5 years. So that is that's the main challenge from a financial point of view if you are a operator or an energy supplier. And that's in the Netherlands also a part where most stakeholders, including city councils themselves, see a significant role for themselves. Well, in high density areas, space is scarce. And this scarce space is not only, on the surface when you are walking in the streets, on the pavements, but it's also in underground with a lot of electricity cables, drinking water pipelines, wastewater infrastructure, etc., etc., etc. So that's really an issue. And last but not least, and I think we will come back to that later on in a few times, that's a challenge for the city council or government in its own, that is determining your own position. Okay, this is one on ownership. We have some it's decreasing. Some district heating systems that are 100% public owned. When I look into the history, 20, 30 years ago, all district heating companies and all energy companies were public owned. In the Netherlands, often owned by a combination of provinces and cities. We have some district heating companies who are private owned and are fully private financed. And then we have a third category. I think that's a category that's still rather doing well, although it has its own challenges. That is private owned, but the cities are the main and sometimes even own shareholder. And that's, well, that organization has some advantages. In the few ones we have that are still public owned, there is a lack of technical expertise, a lack of distance between the economic decision making, because it's a company, and more the governmental overall policies and strategies, and that that's a not well managed struggle, leading to unexpected shifts in, I think, in strategic directions, and sometimes even operational directions. And well, it has led to most of them to a recurrent negative news articles because they're not, well, because they are really in problems, or on the technical side or on the financial side. So we see that there is some movement to move up to this combination of private owned with cities and or other governmental institutes to play a role as main shareholders. So then there is a lot of influence, but it is a bit more at arm length than within a public company.
If I may, this is Emilia from the Celsius Initiative, if I may ask a question. So when you mean public, I'm not sure I understand the difference between private but the cities are the main shareholders, and public. So is it public, for example, what you see often in France, that the city owns the infrastructure but has concession agreements with private operators? Or private, I'm guessing it's owned and operated by private companies. And
in public, it is really operated by a city department.
Okay. Okay. And so, for example, the case and what you mean by private, but cities are shareholders is what you often see in Scandinavia, in Sweden, for example, where here in Gothenburg Energy, it's its own energy company, but the city owns the company as a whole. It's like part of the company.
Yeah, and
maybe.
you know, and the difference with Scandinavia, like Copenhagen, Stockholm, etc., that is, as far as I understood, there you have one company with one very, like Copenhagen, with one very big, I think 2,000 plus connections, far above 2,000 plus connections, district heating company. So there's a one of one. But what you see in the Netherlands, that these companies like, you know, I work for Twens. Twens has approximately, I think, 17. No, they have 20 shareholders. 70 are cities, and in these 70 cities, they have small and medium-sized district heating systems.
Okay. I'm wondering how this compares, for example, to
and there is no.
Sorry, yes. No, okay, please go ahead.
So and there is no one-to-one relation. It is not so that this district heating system of this Twens company in City 1, you know, that there is a one-to-one possibility of the shareholder of the city council to direct the development of this individual district heating system. They can influence the overall sourcing strategy, growth strategy, etc. So it is a bit different, I think, than in Copenhagen, but the principles are the same.
And I was just going to comment, one of the cities present here is Vukovar, and Christian, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's more or less the same principle for your city, which is a smaller city, but you're completely owned by the city council, right?
Yeah, that's correct. You could compare those two situations.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. So yeah, and on the other side, so this is on ownership in general, and as you can see in the right, in the two rectangles, have discussed it all already. Sometimes the sources, infrastructure, and the administrative processes are in the hand of one company, and sometimes we see it as split, and then you need, you know, then you need up to 10. Often 15, and we consider that a lot. From where we're coming with, you need 15 companies, 15 entities to be well aligned if you want to be able to deliver year around some heat. And when you talk to someone in Copenhagen and it would be near, then he would smile, because he would say, well, we are one coordinating company, but in order to deliver year-round heat, we need to align 30, 50 individual companies to make it work. This is on ownership. So what do we see as a practice in the Netherlands, in the project we have done as the role or activities of cities? They initiate and coordinate the launch of this district heating system. So as initiator, that starts, of course, with first idea, a first thought, sometimes from within the city, sometimes from energy corporation, sometimes from an energy supplier, can be all trees, and then they start in a lengthy process first of, are there enough people interested to give serious thoughts on this? Then there's often a kind of feasibility study looking at the techno-economic perspective. Maybe already then assessing support on the market, support on the suppliers, and when that has a positive outcome, then we get the real business case development, preparing the design phase, building phase, implementation phase. And often, somewhere at the start of this designing phase, the initiator and coordinating role of the city is stopped and is handed over to other players, often a main builder, also often the expected operator. And a third alternative would be handed over to a newly set up independent energy service company. A second role would be creating the right conditions and policies, and aligning policies for the development of this district heating system. So that has some social dimensions. And in the Netherlands, there is a situation that consumers have the freedom of choice when it goes for new district heating systems. So there's no way that a organization or a law can force you to take a connection, to pay for it, and to use the heat. There's always the alternative: go for a individual solution and install a heat pump in your house. And creating enough support, or that is considered a important role for the city. And it's not only they're not alone. Getting enough customers should also be a responsibility of the commercial company, if it is a commercial company that wants to sell the heat, eager operate the district heating system. But there is some role for the city over here, and in some of the projects we've done, especially for the the first neighborhoods that are planned to get connections to a new district heating system, the city council and city representatives takes responsibility to create or to get commitment and signatures of the minimum needed set of future customers. So, and if the city council is not able to do that, then the initiative will stop. Special should have been spatial planning, of course. We have a lot of dense areas where getting the space for the pipelines and installing them could be a problem. There are, for example, there are sources like for example, solar thermal and geothermal. Geothermal only in the development phase. They need a lot of space. We had some in one city. We had a tremendous potential for nice heat, so 65 degrees. That's considered nice. That's considered, well, that's considered good to very good. A very large source, but this area was so dense populated with buildings, houses, offices, energy infrastructures, etc., that we couldn't find a spot where we could start exploiting and building this geothermal plant. Because you need in the building phase of that source, you need 4 to 6 more square meters than in the operational phase. And we could manage to find a spot with enough operational phase, but if we want to build it, we have to tear down a few building complexes. Okay, so that's one, and of course there's also some financial. But by the way, what's not directly in this list, that means that that also the local energy strategy has to create clarity and the right conditions for district heating. So there has to be some clarity for midterm and long term. There has to be a willingness in general. Is our current thinking in the Netherlands on the council side, on the operator side, and also on the VGL side and other sides, that this district heating system has a payback time, if you do your job very good, between 10 to 20 years. So that means that the contracting party has to keep that in mind and has to be willing to make these 10 to 20 year contracts. Well, I'm not sure what's the situation in your countries, but when we would have, well, we start about this, you know, as an ambition. I think it's almost 10 years ago, maybe a bit less. But when I first started on district heating projects, a bit more than 10 years ago, this payback period of district heating systems was 30, 40, 45 years, but depending on which system I analyze. So that's, we're coming from a long way, and are still players in our market, district heating companies, energy suppliers, that think that payback periods and contracts for less than 30 years are really not viable. Okay, third one, yeah, it's also a bit all in the previous one discussed a proactive role of the city to organize user support and to mobilize part of the market from the demand side. We have also, as a fourth one, a important role that really see almost all cities here as essential to set up and coordinate market consultation. Heat becoming more or less free market. So that means that every supplier, every district heating operator has to get the opportunity to bid for a new district heating system, and that's most times done by a elaborate 1 to 2 year process of market consultation, which includes the rough design and the selection of, let's call it, a winning consortium that gets the possibility, the opportunity to develop and build and operate the system. And last but not least, financial measure with a special attention in request and also in actual performance attitudes, where we see that often cities provide 4,000 to 8,000 euros per connection to create a positive business case and primarily to reduce the huge losses and risks in a startup phase. Sometimes they do that, that higher 8,000 to 9,000 euros for all connections, and sometimes it's only for connections outside the domain of the dwellings of housing companies. Because in case the houses are owned by housing companies, this contribution is most times paid by the housing company. Any questions on these?
Very clear, thank you.
Okay. Now I'm at the framework for techno-economic analysis, which is basically the core of the work. So now you see on this one subject, I think you see 4 or 5 slides. Of course, we look at the technical maturity of the different components, technical components of the district heating system, which is quite an issue and quite a analysis, and that counts for the whole set of aspects we look into when you select assess the energy sources, which is rather straightforward when you look at the components in the network, in the distribution infrastructure. There are a few exciting choices to be made, but in all or less, it's really a quite straightforward assessment. Okay, so let's do in first round this this analysis framework from a perspective of the sustainable energy sources you want to you consider to integrate in your district heating network. Technical maturity, cost, revenue, sustainability, future-proofness, flexibility, support of users, support of suppliers and operators, and organizational complexity. I think most of them count for themselves. I spent a few lines on sustainability. Sustainability could either be limited to CO2 emissions or have a broader perspective on, well, still ecological sustainability. It could also be, heading to a kind of environmental assessment of the energy source. And what we see in some countries over here, definitely in the Netherlands, but it's starting to gain momentum. That's where we considered biomass and burning wood as a sustainable resource. We see more and more inhabitants and also companies and cities who see biomass in different forms as a quite unwished and unsustainable and even non-acceptable solution. Future-proof. That's heading two sides of. The one side is the source we have now. We should be relatively certain that it's still there in 10, 15, 20 years. Well, assessment of that is a good idea. Although our personal professional opinion is that, you know, most times when you lose a source, for example, a waste source of a food plant, it will be substituted by another source. So if you have already multiple sources, you shouldn't be, you know, too hesitated or too uncertain if some of these sources are not fully proof. The other one is the lock-in. There are choices for sources that, well, that more or less, but important is, of course, that more or less block a route to alternative future solutions, and you want to prevent that. Flexibility of the source. There are two kinds of flexibility. Flexibility, you know, to adapt on day-to-day or week-to-week basis, you know, let's say the short time of the 4 seasons to changes in demand. And the other one is the long-term flexibility, heading to, okay, how good is a certain source? How cheap is it to the investment, euro-wise and activity-wise, if year 5 and 6 we would have a demand growth of 20% or a decline in demand of 10%. Is it easy to adapt to that, and to what degree? Supportive users is discussed several times, so I can skip that, I think. Yeah, supportive suppliers and operators. And maybe I should have used the word, I think I used it in the next slide, appetite of suppliers and operators. So suppliers meaning suppliers of heat, and operators of district heating systems. Before starting this market consultation, it's really important to know if there are, for example, for a certain source like geothermal, there are enough potential suppliers, and there are enough that are interested and are professional to create this market dynamic that is needed to get a good competitive proposal for them. And in some situations this was very easy, and in some of our projects sources were skipped from the short list because we discovered during our research that there was a lack of interest of suppliers. There was only one supplier who would have a monopoly already in the negotiation phase, and in other, hypothetically, there is one supplier or there are two suppliers, but we're not sure they are fit for the job. Organization complexity. I would say that this is one we assess in broader sense. How difficult would it be for one hand the city to build up the competences, to start the processes, the decision-making processes, the legislation development procedures, etc., to manage this operation and to growth in their role. And on the other side, how do we assess the success rate of the consortium? You know, when we have a lot of potential consortium partners in this ESCO or in this configuration, and they're not used to work with each other, and there are a few in this 15er group who had some really trouble working in previous projects. The complexity of the decision making and the reserves you have to keep in your pocket for extra negotiations. So in throughput time, in hours, in money, in all kind of extra research for risk mitigation. Then you have then the complexity is is high. Well, I think you can all have from other domains in district heating can see the relevance of this this part. Okay, for this one I don't go in much detail. Here you have again in a shorter description the same aspects we look in our Techno-Economic Studies. Here you have a part of the list of what is represent key performance indicators. For some of these aspects, we have a long list of 10. For others, we limit it to 3 or 4. And often in the start of our process, based on a first review of the context and in-depth discussion with our clients, so most times City Council, the City Council choose a limited set, limited than the 20 plus you see here, and certainly limited than the I think 50 plus of our total long list to be included, assessed, and calculated as part of the feasibility study. Here you see a summary of a assessment of 15, a bit up to 10 resources. Of course, there's a lot of material, a few pages per source. So here you see again the criteria. In the columns you see different sources. Surface water, wastewater, industrial waste heat from a CHP, biogas, geothermal, and different types of solar thermal. These are still in Dutch, so you will have some problem.
This is Amelia again. I'm sorry for asking so much questions. This is for the Netherlands in general. Is this, or is this at a European level?
No. This is a specific example from a specific city. Okay.
So this is the type of analysis you did to help them. Was it a city with an existing network, or
no? This was a city with a new network.
Okay.
Now, well, what you see is here that there are a lot of sustainable sources in the proximity of the city, over 10, almost 15. They have a potential of twice the heat supply compared to the demand. So that was also good. And of course, it's not only about a quick choice of the green, yellow, orange, or red dot, that there is a more in-depth analysis underlying this. But this is one of the ways we communicate it in presentations with the City Council.
Thank you for the clarification.
This is well, strictly spoken, similar, but different way to perform your.
Sorry, Ben. Just a quick question. How long do you think that it will take the rest of the presentation?
This is my last slide.
Yeah, that's why I asked it. No, thank you. Yeah, okay. So thank you.
And I can be, if that was also behind the question, you time-wise, I can be very quick on it.
No. Just take because it's your presentation is really good. So it's really comprehensive, and you are looking into several details that are really relevant. So yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, this could also have been one of my 8 backup slides. This is the Commercial Readiness Index. It's developed by a Australian, I think it was maybe it was the Australian Ministry for Energy, but it could also be an Australian Agency for Energy Transition to assess energy technologies. There is some similarity between what you saw before and what you see here, but it differs. This is a methodology that is also adapted by the International Energy Agency and IRENA, so it has some status. I think it has far more valuable than a technical readiness level analysis. I think this, if you really want to get a good insight in possibilities and a thorough assessment of sources or energy technologies or technical measures to be considered to support the energy transition, this is the best concept I know, and I think as a that would be just as a kind of extra, if you consider to how do you say it, to send out a thing like a request for proposal for the development or the implementation, design, building, and operating on district heating system, and you are worrying about the system or technological components, consider to request a commercial readiness index. You will get a lot of good information out of that. Just a bit of marketing for a analytical tool that I came up to, I think, some 5 years ago. It's really good stuff. Okay. I would leave it here, Joch.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't know if someone has questions to be presented. Yes, George?
I have a few questions, and this is a great and very thorough presentation. going back to the beginning, Ben, you had talked about the suitability of various building types based on when they were built. And you mentioned that pre-1945, they were not suitable for district energy. Was that because they're just not well insulated, or is there less densely built? Or
yeah, it is insulated. It is the quality of the buildings, which makes it you know, difficult for the in-house judgment to be made. And difficult is two things. There is no room between the walls to put away pipelines. These buildings are relatively small, which makes it you know, all extra equipment that is needed or change in equipment is a pain in the ass. The holes you need to come in the building makes the wall even more vulnerable, etc., etc. And of course, there is a special category within it that are buildings that are even further, you know, before 1900. They are on. They are. I'm not sure. Well, I've even forgotten the Dutch word for it. They are historical buildings, and there are all kind of, you know, extra requirements that have to be met if you want to work on this listed buildings.
Thank you.
But it's really it is a rule of thumb, isn't it? But you understood that.
Yeah, no, that's good to have these rules of thumb. I find that they're very helpful. So I have some more questions. You talked about aquathermal, and can you provide some sort of a definition? What's the range of aquathermal applications? You know, that's not really a term that I've come across before.
So what we do, the main source for aquathermal is surface water. Could be a pond, a lake, a river, could even be the sea. What you can do is lead the surface, tap the surface water and lead it to a heat pump. You can do that at two levels. That is sometimes it's done just below the surface, which has advantage that you have high temperatures relatively in the summer and relatively low temperatures in the winter. Even no heat because the water is frozen. Or you can do it on a deeper level, that's 10 meters plus, which means that you have a low plus constant temperature year over. And in Europe, it's considered that it's with most heat pumps easy with a good harvest to get heat out of 10 degrees plus water. It can be done with 4 degrees. It can also be done with 1 degree, but it's considered above 10, you're good. Below 10, well, there are some specificities to the insulation you use, and that comes with extra cost.
Would the circulation temperature or would the circulation piping have antifreeze at that point if you're just pulling getting from 10 degree water?
Nope. No. So the circulating water goes to a heat pump, and in the heat pump you have a second circuit. So the water from the river strikes besides the heat exchanger and with a low speed, and delivers its heat to a other medium. That other medium is not water, but that other medium is often it's glycol. Is it also an English term? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
It's glycol because glycol can freezes at -10, -15. I'm not sure. That's one reason, and the other reason is in this heat exchanger and the heat pump and the system, the distribution system, are vulnerable for all kinds of particulates in the river water. So that's the primary reason to have two separate circuits. Yeah.
Is it common to take water from the river? I mean, I would think that you're changing the temperature for the fish. You know, I guess if it's a big river and you're not taking too much heat, it doesn't affect things too much.
Yeah.
But have there been regulations regarding that at all?
Yes, there is a strict regulation that that the cooled water that you put back into the river should limit the local cooling of the water to at most 6 degrees, and often when it is in a more, you know, nature, biodiversity, vulnerable area, it should be below 3 degrees Celsius. And in the Netherlands nowadays, we are considering a more strict legislation because sometimes in some conditions you have, you know, people discussing, yeah, but if we have this -6, if this is -10 in a small section of the river for only 30 minutes, is it also a danger for species? And should we also block that, or should we see what the temperature is at Naya? So we are considering stricter legislation, but in general, the -3 is the minimum, and the -3 has no effect for this kind of systems. Our systems are medium-sized on biodiversity. When you look at the deposition of cooling water of data centers or electricity companies or the very, very big installations in Scandinavia, then we speak about other problems. But also there in Scandinavia, there is the experience that is -degree cooling of water is enough to create a positive business case for the solution and doesn't harm the flora and fauna. Now, of course, there are other sources because you also can get your heat from your wastewater, from your drinking water pipelines, from your wastewater purification installation, etc., etc. But wastewater is one of the most populous, and it is definitely in the new small-sized solutions, you know, from 1,000 to 5,000 connection points we see in the Netherlands. And then it's combined with local storage. So we use aquifers to storage the surplus of heat we harvest in the summer to bring that back to the houses in the winter. And there we have the same system because there you could also ask, well, what does that have for consequences on the biolife in the soil? So there comes also a legislation on that is already in place and getting stricter also, but no problem for the ones who want to use it. that, you know, that extracting heat from it in the winter and bringing back colder water in the summer, so that not only over a year, but that when we come back over 20 years, the temperature of the water or the temperature of the soil is more or less the same as the temperature when you started 20 years ago with this solution. Yeah, that is all kind of legislation. It's I think it's well handled.
Could I ask one more question? Or does somebody else want to jump in? I'll ask one more question.
Yes, go ahead.
So I know one thing that I've seen considered for utilities, because they have right of way already, they're already working in the streets. They already have some infrastructure. They're looking at geothermal wells in the street. Have you seen that done? You know, basically,
No.
you understand what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
tear up the street, put in vertical wells, and then cover it over again, and using that as a district energy.
No, I would say we are as the Netherlands late starters in geothermal for the built environment. We have a lot of how do you call it? Kassen Eelco. Is Eelco there? Greenhouses, yeah, greenhouses. We have a lot of greenhouses that are heated by geothermal installations. So that's already operational for 10 to sometimes 20 years. In the built environment, you see a lot of geothermal installations in the Alp regions, so southern Germany, Austria, Switzerland, and we had a few, one. We had one in the Netherlands, which didn't came true when it was started, but we are now working on, I think 5 to 10 in the Netherlands, so not as the VGL, and there we consider to put them, you know, around under parks, playing fields, etc., because I'm really surprised and would love to see where you see these examples, because the problem with geothermal is that when you're building it, you need quite a surface or quite a space to store water that is used during making the boreholes, etc., and that's really space consuming. The installation, when it is ready, it's relatively small and easy to integrate in a neighborhood, but the developing phase is asking some space. So do you know cities that have done that or are doing this?
It's been there's a couple of pilot programs here in Massachusetts that are looking to do just that.
Okay.
It hasn't been done yet, and that's their intention is to do it that way. And from my own, I haven't heard of anyone anywhere else doing it that way.
No, it's for me also new.
Yeah.
And very interesting. Because that would also solve the problem for one of my clients.
Oh yeah. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, I'm the one saying thank you. Great presentation. I think that it was really good to have you with this overview. So I would just ask if someone else has a question. If not, we will move forward. We are just a few, so I will make this question whether you have something to present that you have prepared during these weeks before. If you haven't, no worries. I would suggest that and state that we are here to support you even after this process. So please do contact us in case of any doubts on the development of your project. If you see that we can somehow help with our expertise, namely using the facilities that we have shown before of linking with the investors and all of that. So basically, we are here to support you. But again, if someone has something to present, just raise your hand or open the microphone. If not, I would make kind of question that is really relevant for us, is how to improve these master classes. So basically the question is, what did you like and what did you not like it so much on the during the master class, and what can we improve for a future edition that we hope to do together with Celsius again. I can consider the silence that it was really good or really bad, so I'm in doubt.
Should we be optimistic and have it positive? Another
Yeah.
option for us is to send, because there are a lot of people who weren't able to make it today, unfortunately, is we can send a Google evaluation. So it's anonymous and people don't feel the pressure.
Make it easier. Yeah. The idea here was just if you have some feedback or some point that we could improve, but I agree we should send something out anonymous so that people can feel and write wherever they think, and maybe less positive comments are also very welcome so that we can improve. In this case, we will make it a little bit shorter the day today. I would just invite Georg to do some final statement, and then some also from Celsius. And yeah, I can start with this final statement. It was a pleasure for me personally, and as part of the matchmaking team, I think that I can talk about all the marketplace team. We are very happy with this event. It was really good to show a little bit of our knowledge, also to learn a lot with all the participants and speakers. So it was really a good opportunity for us, and for me personally, it was really interesting. Georg, would you be able to give us some final words?
Yes, of course I can. Yeah, first of all, thanks for this great presentation and the level of detail, which is certainly helpful. And with all respect and humbly requesting, we should make this really available to our stakeholders, also via the Smart Cities Marketplace, since there's there's really a great level of detail, and it's almost a bit like a do's and don'ts book for heating and cooling projects. So I've really found this very interesting, and also again, despite of course the length of the presentation, but the level of detail is really quite helpful. And I can only repeat what George has said, that this kind of masterclass is something new. We are testing with the Smart Cities Marketplace as part of our matchmaking services, the Explore Shape deal cycle. I've also a few minutes ago mentioned in the chat. So this all is really helpful, I believe, to help stakeholders to really get hands-on, to understand what a project entails, And then actually at all levels of maturity and also expertise. I mean, I understand that in this specific masterclass, we had quite a few people who are already kind of in the middle of their projects, starting to implement them. But there might also be people who are well aware that earlier or later they would need to and yeah, actually to really get all levels of maturity and expertise on board within this matchmaking funnel, as we call it. And the idea really is to help replicating, upscaling successful approaches, making them bankable, interesting for investors. And that's pretty much what we do in the whole range of activities supported by the matchmaking facility of the Smart Cities Marketplace. So there is not much more I can say. I'm just saying thank you for being with us. And I would also kindly invite you to spread the word. And maybe we can do another masterclass at some point, specifically on heating and cooling. I think this is a sector which is really, challenging to some extent, and also one of the most promising areas when we speak about smart cities and communities, because there's a whole lot of cross-cutting links to areas such as energy poverty, social housing, and so on and so forth. So it's really, and also when we talk about, we had the example of the Netherlands, we talk about really phasing out fossil fuels, like for the Netherlands, really moving out of the gas dependency and exploring other ways of providing heat, but also electricity to dwellings, to the grid, and so on. So this is really stuff we will continue to have a look at. And the mission we have is really to make that applicable, replicable, and understandable, comprehensive to stakeholders who also consider doing these projects. And here I stop. Again, thanks a lot. Take care, stay healthy, and stay with us. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Emilia, just you have the honor of closing the event.
Wow, I wasn't expecting that. But I just want to underline what has been said before. Thank you very much. It has been a real pleasure. We at Celsius love this trial and error and improving and tailor-made solutions. So I really do look forward to continuing the start. We see this as a start of a collaboration. I see possibilities to continue through the forerunner groups in a new masterclass in the fall, maybe more adapted, to follow up with the groups, the work we've done today, particularly for the ones who are just have an idea, getting started, to see maybe in 6 months where they stand, how that can be integrated, and to continue this dialogue and collaboration, because we do have many aligned goals. And so there are many synergies to be found, and we look forward to continue that collaboration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. And again, a special thanks for our guest speaker. It was really good presentation today. Thank you all. I hope to see you soon.